Hey guys, welcome to MSP Mindsets. On this episode today, we're talking with Wayne Hunter. For those folks that are actually paying close attention to the MSP Mindset, he's been an amazing guest before. This time we're having him on because he just launched his new book called The Compliance Formula. And I don't know how you feel about compliance. Maybe you go, maybe I go, it's one more thing I got to do. Sometimes it's not the most popular word. Sometimes you think maybe this is a way I can help my client or make money or all of those things. But if you want to know about compliance, this is the guy that wrote the book on it, and he has become a #1 bestseller on Amazon with his book, The Compliance Formula. So let's pick his brain today. Anything is fair game. If you're watching this live, drop it in the comment. If you want to comment later, we'll do our best to answer. If you're watching this on the replay, and compliance matters so much to him that he decided to write a book about it. He's previously written a self-published book that is called Exploited. So we'll be dropping the links in here. Before I kind of get into that, I want to talk about Wayne. So Wayne's the founder and CEO of AvTek Solutions. So he's been in the IT industry for over 30 years, captain of an accountability group in Robin Robbins, former Navy submariner. Thank you for your service, Wayne. Specializes in disaster recovery and data protection. Super passionate about his team and work culture. He and I love to geek out on that. And now, best-selling author. So let me introduce, with no further ado, Wayne Hunter.
Hey, Damien, appreciate it, man. Kind words.
Absolutely. So thanks for being here. And so a lot of the book is about all kinds of things, compliance in terms of DoD and NIST and CMMC, but you've been doing compliance for so long, we could talk about anything. You want to talk about PCI, you want to talk about HIPAA, right? Anything's fair game. Does that sound good to you?
Sure.
Okay. And before we kind of get too deep into this, I want to let you guys know that anybody who comments, so ask good questions, drop some comments, but anybody who comments on the live stream is going to be entered into a drawing. So I love the idea of this in helping people. So Wayne's got the compliance formula held up. We are going to drop a link in so you can buy it, but comment and we will enter you in a drawing to give away copies of the book today. And if you stay at the end, there's going to be another way you can get your hands on that book for free. But we will drop a link in to buy it should you miss that link. And by the way, we've got copies of this going out. Wayne's got copies going out. And if you buy it, either way, the proceeds from the book are all going to benefit St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. So you can help yourself get ahead of the compliance questions that you're inevitably getting asked or about to be asked. You can help your clients, and you can do something that's net win for the Children's Hospital over at St. Jude's. So don't miss this book, whether you get a free copy or part with your hard-earned money. Make sure you get a copy. And Wayne, from what I understand, #1 bestseller. It's been, I thought compliance, is fairly niche. So, but from what I understand, it's doing quite well. I've had to have a restocking or whatever the word is.
This book here, it's specifically about the DoD and what's called CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, that the DoD has been working on, DIBCAG, for a while. Yeah, but the interesting part about it is and the only reason why I did it, I don't necessarily chase DoD business, but my old Navy brain, I can't help myself being on submarines. I wanted to know about it because the main reason I wanted to know about it is because it's based on the same framework a lot of the other compliance in the commercial market's based off of. And so if regulation is going to come down and it's going to be driven hard to, you have to meet these compliancy requirements. If it's happening in DoD and government, sooner or later, it's going to trickle down into the market and compliance market. I mean, the commercial market. But it already has in so many different ways, and it's increasing. I'm getting phone calls, you name it, whether it be a CPA firm, a bookkeeping firm, to a manufacturing company asking us. So it's a very interesting topic, and for MSPs, it's something that all MSPs should be paying attention to. And even if they're not selling compliance services, they need to do compliance work to get themselves compliant. It's something
Yeah.
you really need to pay attention to.
Awesome. So tell us why. I'm going to come back to the MSPs. Tell us why manufacturers. Tell us why some of these perhaps seemingly not directly connected, don't seem obvious businesses, maybe not be directly connected to the DoD. Why are these perhaps smaller businesses that people might think don't, fly under the radar, may not have to be?
Right.
Why are they now suddenly subject to this and having to come to grips with all of this?
Well, it's not they haven't been subject to it. They've
Mm-hmm.
always been subject to it for as long as they're even the subs that's dealing to primes, and the prime has the contract. It just
Mm-hmm.
never been enforced. It has been pushed down. It's always been there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a checkbox. Did you do this? Yes, check and go. You know,
Mm-hmm.
now it's being enforced because ever since you had the executive orders that's been done by the president early in 2021, that's pushing down more stringent cybersecurity and compliance requirements. Now it's being actually enforced. So you'll see like a little manufacturer of just widgets that's supplying to a prime to the DoD on a contract. Yes, they don't have the actual contract. They're just a sub to there. But now it trickles down to when they renew their little agreement. Now it has, do you have an SRPS score?
What does that
And if
mean
you
for
don't,
those that don't speak acronyms?
it's a security and risk profile score.
Okay.
So it's determining, what's your score. So you've done a self-assessment against a framework to determine where you sit in the scoring model. If you don't have that, they don't even look at your agreement anymore. They want to prove it. It's automatically denied. Well, to get a
Wow.
SRPS score, you need to have an assessment. It asks, have you had a NIST assessment, 800-171 assessment? If you haven't, you need to get a third party to come do that for you. So then you can get your score and now you can do your contract. So even though they don't handle the contract itself, it's still being enforced down because now you inherit, just like an MSP. If a MSP is doing services for a vendor, for a customer that has a DoD contract, what's called FCI, Federal Contract Information. It's not CUI information, but they have a contract. You now have to meet the same requirements as your client does because you inherit the responsibility, you inherit the liability. So you have to really pay attention what's going on and how you're positioning your services with customers that may have that. If you don't know, you need to ask. You need to find out.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just go ahead and volunteer something, Wayne. I get asked about compliance because I work with so
Mm-hmm.
many MSPs, whether it's about our business with Serosity, whether it's about who do you know that can help me with compliance, what does this FIPS thing mean, and which NIST section do I start with, and how far do I have to go
Right.
down the CMC rabbit hole? And I am not an expert. And I admit the compliance formula is the first book I ever read on compliance because it's just not high on my Audible reading list to read about compliance. But the reason I say that is I've talked to so many MSPs. I have talked to so many vendors. I have read so many different things in cybersecurity and compliance. And most of them kind of sound like smoke and mirrors. And I'm not saying that they all are, but they start to sound like just word jumble. So this was the first one I ever read, guys, the compliance formula, that personally explained it in what I felt like was layman's terms. It helped me connect the dots of what is NIST and this 800 and why is there a 171 after it, and this dot, what does that really mean and why? And then how that kind of impacts every MSP. So I'm going to come back to a question, but for those just tuning in, we're going to get into that type of thing. We're going to talk about the compliance complexities, risks if you don't do it, how to get ahead of your competitors, and we're certainly going to make some time for Q&A. So as a quick reminder for those joining, drop some interesting comments in there. Everybody that drops in a comment is going to enter drawing to win the compliance formula right there. Thank you, Wayne. So the new bestseller on Amazon. So if you'd like to get your hands on that for free, drop a comment in and we'll enter you in to win that. So speaking of comments, thanks for joining us, Morgan. She's saying, hey, and we have, looks like Stevie saying she's really anticipating what you have to say today. She enjoyed and remembers your last podcast. So that's awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good. Thank you, Stevie. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. So, what you were just saying, and I wanted to connect it because again, I don't want people to come in and say, man, this is super technical. This is for people that are selling only to the DoD or just like deep cybersecurity geeks. Like I don't fit any of those. I'm not knowledgeable enough to wear any of those hats, right? This
Right.
is something I need to know about, just like an MSP. And it was the most down to earth explanation. So that kind of leads me back to why, as an MSP, is compliance, whether it's this compliance or any other, why is it so essential to understand this? And why can I not just bury my head in the sand and avoid it?
Right. Well, whereas DoD is a very niche, and I
Mm-hmm.
did that just for the main thing. I don't chase DoD business. I do a lot. I mainly, as most people know, I do finance, one of the heavily regulated. But even for that business, since 2008, they've been fined over $243 billion in fines because of non-compliance. Think about that. This is an industry that spends $10,000 per employee per year on compliance, but they still can't get it right. So yes,
Did
it
you
can
say
be
did you say
complicated.
million or billion?
Million, 243 million.
243
Yeah,
million? Okay.
yeah.
That's a lot of
No,
money.
no, a lot of money, a lot of money. So what should anybody do about compliance, and what does it mean to you? Think about cybersecurity insurance and nothing else. Every company, including you, have cybersecurity insurance requirements.
Yep.
Guess what? There's a set of requirements, and it's based off the whole cybersecurity insurance industry is based off a framework. It's based off the CIS framework. So it's got essential eights. Those controls that you have, you can actually go in and analyze your environment to make sure you're meeting those what's called controls, which are security standards, change management, access control, password management, patching, all the things that you do to deliver your requirement. Those are things that you are in place and you document to meet those standards. And then from those standards, it's just not that alone. And this is where a lot of people don't think about it. It also brings in your policies, your acceptable use policies, your bring your own device policies, your security policy, that tying to your standard operating procedures of how you're deploying and maintaining what you do for customers today and maintaining the patching, all that. You tie that in, and then it also is asking about, which is the area that per FBI is 90% of all hacks start at, and that's employee training. Well, that's also tracked by compliance. Compliance is checking that you doing the cybersecurity training to your employees, but also your vendors. Do you have requirements of your vendors and they're interfacing? Are you tracking those requirements to make sure they meet it? Though that's compliance. A lot of people think cybersecurity and compliance, they basically try to make them be the same thing, and they're not. Cybersecurity is how I go deploy tools and monitor and maintain environments to be secure, whereas compliance is about documenting and identifying gaps in the security and how I'm going to remediate that. So that's the combination. So what you need to do and focus on, start with just cybersecurity insurance because everybody's going to have it. Every one of your customers has, and make sure you do that. Then you can start looking at what happens after that because you got industry based, you got state and local government based, and Fed based stuff that's applying to everybody today. It's coming down faster than you can stay up with it. That's about all I've been doing for the past year is focusing on that part of the business.
Yes, I want to kind of back up and reiterate what you
Sure.
said there, Wayne. Right. So we're all paying for cybersecurity insurance.
Mm-hmm.
If you're running a business, you're paying for it,
Yep.
and your customers are paying for it. But that's multiple things. And we were talking before, and you mentioned you've got to check these boxes. You've got to do those things, right? You've got to
Mm-hmm.
meet these levels of compliance. And what happens if you don't? What happens if you thought you were doing those things and you're paying all this money for your cybersecurity insurance because it's not getting any cheaper? And it seems like they keep asking more and more, cybersecurity questions every year. It's not getting easier. So what happens if, I'm not saying you did it on purpose, but what happens if you're mistaken? What happens if you really didn't do that thing that you checked the box and said you did do it?
They don't pay. They
Right.
deny you. It's that simple. It's that. What we're talking about here is that in every cybersecurity insurance policy, and anybody's ever looked at one, it's like reading a government contract. I mean, it's just ad nauseum.
Right.
But throughout that, there are things that are set as requirements that when you sign that policy, you're signing saying, I have these requirements met in my environment. Okay. And that varies from underwriter to underwriter. Okay. So I've actually partnered with a company that I don't make no money off cybersecurity insurance. I don't want it because I consider that a conflict of interest. My job is to get someone to look at it and say, okay, tell me in this policy, what are the requirements that are in this policy? And someone that's used to reading these policies. And they are able to tell me that. Plus, they work with me to educate the customer about why they need to do these things and why they need us to do them, the MSP. We find out what those requirements are and make sure they're deployed and they're monitored and documented, because when you get hacked, and it's not a if, it's a when, because there's nothing perfect. There's nothing 100%. It always rolls out there. But you can show that you met those requirements. You've had them in place, all those. Now the insurance company will pay. If you don't have those base things in place, they're out. That's their out. And today they're taking them. They're taking those outs because the amount of money they spent since the Centennial Pipeline, all these others, the amount of money is going out there, they really narrowed down. And now to your point about what are those requirements, what they're asking for? Used to, they would ask for some basic things, but there's 5 or 6 things every underwriter asks for. Do you have immutable backups? Are you doing patch management? Do you have 2FA to every person that accesses your network? Not 1 or 2. It's deployed to every one of them, and they're
Did we buy
all
MFA?
using.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's different
Yeah,
than did we
before you'd
buy a
say,
tool.
they would ask, hey, you got MFA? It's been there. Well, people would go and say, yeah, I got it deployed. Check.
Yep.
But now they specifically are asking to all persons that have access to the environment. Do you have a SIM in place? Okay. Think about that. How many times in the past do you think about cybersecurity insurance policy and you think that you got to have a SIM in place to get it?
Right.
That's a
It's
requirement. Those are things that, but now it's even expanded past there, that even some stuff I didn't expect. Earlier this year, I got one from a client, and the underwriter was asking to report on how many records in your environment contains PII information. Think about that for a second. Well, the way they described it is how many records. Well, record includes any file, any, whether it's spreadsheet, whatever that, any database, because it's a record. How am I going to search that? That's one thing, but they also explicitly asked 35 different areas. And guess what one of those areas was?
What's that?
Internet browsing cache. How much PII, how many PII records are in your internet browsing cache? Why do you think they asked that? What's the number one reason why they asked that? You know the answer to that? Anybody know that? People saving passwords in their browser, which drives me insane, because that's the easiest place to go hack.
Right.
But now, think about that. Now, insurance underwriters are asking that question.
Well, if they're asking it, whether they're asking that about passwords there, immutable storage, if they're asking it, it's because they're paying out, right? It's because there's a big risk there.
Right. Yeah.
So
I learned an
What
interesting thing for you there for people on that, and I want to make sure I don't want to forget this because I think it's important to everybody, even for the MSPs. One of the things that is highly recommended on the insurance policies, make sure that your policy has what's called um, uh, uh, pay on behalf. The term is called pay on behalf. So think about that. So why is that important? Most insurance companies, what you do and you get that, you pay, then you get reimbursed. Okay. So now you're waiting on money. Insurance companies now they have this option. They really didn't tell you about it, but it's there. It's called pay on behalf. That way, instead of you paying out of your pocket, the insurance company pays directly. And so you're not having to fund that and then wait on reimbursement. Highly recommended you make sure that your policy has that item. That's a biggie.
That's huge. Great tip there. We have a couple comments I wanted to switch to.
Sure.
And Morgan just dropping us a nice reminder. We are giving away a copy, free copies, not one. We got multiple free copies of Wayne's best-selling book, The Compliance Formula. So if you want to know anything about compliance, you want to get your hands on this book, and you want to ask Wayne questions, so drop those in the comments. We've got quite a few. So just so that you guys know, I'm not ignoring you. Let's take a couple here. I want to make sure to take as many as we possibly can. So we've got Andre saying, I'm an SMB consultant, not a technician. So do you think leading with compliance could be a door opener?
I do it every day. Absolutely. I actually do. I have a compliance as a service program we do, and we actually have marketing campaigns that we actually run. And I focus solely on, doing a free cybersecurity policy review. Cost them none, no obligations, whatever. And what I'm doing, and that's where I introduce that partner I have that does this. Okay. And what it does is get that policy one, and I explain to them, hey, we're going to do a free policy. Make sure that you're meeting your requirements. So if the policy needs to pay out, you're covered. Let's make sure you're doing the things you need to do. Very rarely, I mean, extremely rarely do I get somebody that says, I know all of my requirements, and they do, in fact, know them. Most of them don't, because think about it. Who in the environment actually negotiates a cybersecurity policy? It's not the owner, typically. I'm talking to one of my customers right now that I'm actually running a live pen test on. Their actual HR person is negotiating that.
Wow.
What does HR know about IT? They don't. It's not their job, and
That's
they're not
right.
involving the people that can help look at that and make sure they're meeting those requirements. So it's important you go into that. It's a big door opener. That's what I use it for, and it comes in there, and then you can have someone. And the partner I've got, I'll share with you. It's a company called Data Stream. Okay, look them up. They do nothing but cybersecurity insurance. They're awesome. There's a great guy there that I work with. His name's Larry Meter. Just reach out. You just tell him I sent you. He won't hold it against you too much, um, but they work with you. It don't cost you a dime. They work with. They can also write insurance for the vendor, but if they don't get a deal out of it, there's no obligation. But it's an awesome door opener. And from there, it goes on. So instead of saying, hey, I want to talk to you about compliance, talk to them about risk. So that's a big thing,
Exactly.
Andre. And I'm glad you asked that question is I never approach is I want to talk to you about compliance, even if I'm talking to my banking customers that understand that they got compliance stuff. I talk about mitigating risk. What's the current risk in your business that you're exposed to from the current landscape of cybersecurity insurance, ransomware, all this? Let's take a quick look and see how I can help you mitigate that risk so you don't have to worry about it. That's how I approach it.
Well said. We'll take, I know we've got a few more. Quick one from
Sure.
Andre, another one from Andre around how would you do a compliance assessment? And I know your comment might have helped tee up maybe not to approach it from just compliance, but what would you say to that,
No,
Wayne?
no, that's perfectly fine. I like these where there's questions we just take and let it take the discussion wherever it may.
Right.
Uh, there's actually tool sets out there that you can actually go use. I actually sit on the board a couple. I use several different ones, but I would research a set of tools that helps you do that, because I talk about it. It may sound like it's simple. It's not. It is complex. It's a lot of parts to it, because you got to analyze the networks. You got to analyze the systems. You got to analyze documentation. Compare that to a framework based on what that industry frameworks are. Some of the folks, just like in the banking, for example, they got FFIEC. Well, FFIEC is based off NIST 171, but they have some variances to it. Okay. And so you got to incorporate those variances, or whether it's Fedline, or if it's um, FINRA, or if it's the new for CPAs and bookkeeping, you got the new IRS data protection and compliancy uh, requirements they have to meet and coming in and protecting tax information. Then those are all new. They're receiving letters about it all the time, and they got to prove they've had assessment and they got the things in place to protect it and do that. So that's what's happening right now. So it's not just big companies, it's little small 1 and 2 person shops that are having to do this. So if I was you, I would research some tools. Um, if you're not part of, going to something like the channel company exchange events, or going to Channel Pro, or any of those, I would get involved in that, because they're very catered to the MSP, and all those vendors are coming in. It's a good place to see all of that. But I would get a tool set that works for you in what you're trying to do, because there's no way you can do it manually. There's just no way. You got to have some tool sets to help you with it.
Well said. And Andrew and Andre, sorry, just said, thank you. Been looking for tools to quantify the risk in dollar terms. So looks like he's on the right track now.
Yep, absolutely.
I got a lot of questions I want to ask you. I want to take a lot from the audience, and just as a reminder, everybody that comments will be entered. We got multiple copies of the compliance formula, so keep those coming. Those are wonderful. I want to go to Scott, who's saying, would you apply CIS or NIST to medical clients who already have to comply with HIPAA? What are your thoughts on that?
Great question. HIPAA, you got to apply, but from my perspective, and there'll be some what I will call traditionalists on the HIPAA side that would say no, the HIPAA is enough to go do all that. But I've always approached security from a layered approach. And even the HIPAA stuff, if you go look at it, it's based from a lot of the same controls and stuff. Um, there's two camps. There's NIST and then there's CIS. And what you'll find that CIS and NIST, lots of time I look at it, they line up. Two line up, and then they'll be off a little bit. So they come in here. In the tools that I use, when you go in and I say, okay, let's put this control in, it will actually pull up, and you'll see that there's CIS controls, NIST controls, all being mapped at the same time. So if you look at GDPR, they got both in there. If you're looking at HIPAA and you pull it up and go look at the controls underneath, you'll see it's using those controls. So it's already there. So if you use a tool set that allows you to do compliance that way to pull it in, you'll see a lot of that's already being used. I like to expand past that, because you may have the HIPAA piece and coming into there, which is a lot to it, but I always look at it is it's not layering cybersecurity insurance on top of it. So what I do, whether it's I'm doing NIST or whatever it may be, GDPR, HIPAA, PCI DSS4, any of those, I always layer cybersecurity insurance on top of it, which is a set of CIS controls. And by using a tool that already maps them, when I do it one time, it helps map that control to all the ones that I need to meet. I don't have to duplicate it for each area. I have to go off and do it. And that's the beauty of using a tool to help you automate that. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, if it didn't, please ask more, Scott. Thank you for asking that.
Yes, please. Yes.
So talking about things, hopefully make things easier when they're not always that easy. We were talking backstage about backups, and you had I thought a pretty interesting one. Do you mind sharing that one with the group, with the audience here?
Yeah, he was, Damon asked me, what's the funniest story I have about backup? And I've been running this company almost 20 years, and I had a company before it. And in that company, this is back in the days, anybody remembers physical fax machines, when we had to rely on those. We come into our office one morning, And as usual, we walk in, the first thing you do is check the fax machine, come in here, see if there's any orders or anything like that on it. Well, there was a sheet of paper on it. When I picked it up, someone had wrote, "Help, my backups have failed," and wrote the phone number down on it. "Please call." And that wasn't a customer. That was an actual lead that we turned into a customer.
Wait, so your support ticket address wasn't a fax machine? It was better than that even?
That was the first time we asked us, "How'd you get our fax number?" I said, "Well, we looked it up and, you see the main number, but nobody was answering stuff like it. So we said, "But fax." So we figured at least you'd see that when you walked in the door. I'm like, okay, that's a new one on me, but it worked, But for backup, that's coming in there, is the funniest thing that ever happened.
Oh my gosh. A lead via fax. I've lost my backups. That's
Exactly.
crazy. Well, guys, talking about that, just we'll segue over to talking about the sponsor is Servacity. So I'm the founder and a CEO of Servacity. And the reason that I do this, the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I was an MSP who was running best of breed tools, monitoring them and fixing them. And it's complex. It said it was working. It wasn't. Raise your hand. Not that I can see you, but I'm raising mine. If you've ever tested your backups more than annually, more than quarterly for all your clients, it's hard. So I never got around to testing, and I ended up in a spot where I had to tell a customer I couldn't restore their data. Now it's my mission to make sure you don't end up in that same spot. So the two reasons in my mind that we're different is we manage the backups for you to free you up to focus on what makes your business truly valuable and different and unique. And secondly, we do testing, and it's not optional. It's not for some clients. It's built in for every client. So if you'd like all your backups tested daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly, everything from daily verifications all the way to quarterly DR as a service and spin up, which can help with compliance, then kind of give us a look. And then lastly, we store all of your data in tamper-proof immutable storage before insurance even asked, because we felt like it was just the best place to go. If you'd like to go to servacity.com /deep dive, you can join me for a half-hour weekly discussion where we dig deeper, talk a little bit more about how we actually do this, and take any of your questions. And extra special, because we have Wayne on, with the first 5 people who are anything related to IT or an MSP to register at servacity.com /deep dive. They won't be entered into a drawing. They will receive a copy of the compliance formula. So we've got copies set aside for everybody that wants to take a look at servacity.com /deep dive. And we have additional copies set aside for everybody that comments today. So make sure to take advantage of both, because you want to get your hands on the compliance formula. If we run out, if you're not able to get your own free copy, it's totally worth parting with your hard-earned dollars. And just as a reminder for those that have joined since, every dollar of the proceeds goes to benefit St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. So level up your compliance, help your clients grow your business, and help children at the same time. I don't know how to get a better win-win-win than that. So awesome. Real quickly, I just want to talk about a couple of things. Scott was saying having HIPAA in place at least makes it less cumbersome to apply the other controls. And Scott didn't say this, but I am saying this is wonderful to talk about the overlap of controls, because to a layman, sometimes it looks like I've got 42 controls here and 187 controls there. And if you cross 2 or 3 different compliance thresholds, if you're not careful, if you don't map them, you look like you've got, 5 times the work than you realize. So let's take another quick one. I want to get into other things. There's a question from Scott. I'll let you give your input on this, and I'm happy to weigh in too, but saying this might be getting into the weeds, but would offsite backups that have encryption be considered immutable? So I've got my comments, but I'm just hoping to stump Wayne. So you guys keep coming with these comments, and even though that is kind of on the edge of compliance, so if we can stump Wayne, that'll just be a personal victory. So what are your thoughts on that, Wayne? Do I have you muted? Hang on. Let's see.
Is he good now? There you
yes,
go. I think
there we go.
things off. Yeah. So, Scott, good question. It actually does not, encryption does not define immutability. Okay. Because those are two different things. Now, you'll have an encryption not only in flight, but at rest is a question that gets asked, especially with data that's being accessed and things of that nature. But immutability is something different. Immutability is where there is a copy that can't be seen by the user, can't be accessed, that is on a piece of media that cannot be manipulated, cannot be deleted. Okay. There is technology that does that to where as soon as you land your data, it could be the encrypted data that's sitting onto the device, but a copy of that device is get, and it's really most immutable devices is using object oriented storage to do it. And so it's not a traditional file system that allows you to go in there. So that object cannot be modified, whether it's encrypted or not. So encryption is not the same as immutable.
Yes. Dang it. We didn't stump him. So keep trying, guys. Whether you want to stump Wayne, poke fun at me, or win a copy of the book, keep the comments coming. Those are awesome. Yeah, that's really good. I think encryption in flight and arrest from a backup perspective is hopefully table stakes, maybe not in other things. And then immutability is very varied. It's in a number of providers. We're not the only one. It's not in all providers. And like Wayne said, it's different. Encryption is to make sure they can't read it if they get their copy of it. And immutability is, in my mind, to make sure that no matter who gets access, whoever gets the credentials to even your offsite storage. We've always thought, oh, we're going to keep all these versions, maybe a year's worth offsite. By the way, years are minimum. So for example, a year's worth. And that's wonderful. But what if the cyber attacker gets access to your credentials as an MSP and can access the data? What if they get access to the vendor's credentials, my team, my engineers, my developers? What if any of those sort of things happen? Now, it's encrypted, so maybe they can't read it, but immutability comes in terms of how do I make sure if this is my safety net and the thing keeping me from paying, for example, a ransom, how do I make sure that the data can't be modified, manipulated, or deleted? And that's kind of immutability, which is maybe the different part of encryption. So well said. I do a deep dive on once a month on that. So it's one of the deep dives if you're interested. So thanks for asking that one. And just real quickly before we move on, Scott's saying he needs to visit that. Backups are encrypted both in transit and at rest with password protection, which is awesome, but not air gap. So
yeah. And immutable, it could be is a form of air gap in a way to that, Scott. So you're on the right track. It's because the immutable is about it cannot be modified, deleted, anything like that. A good way to, as a good test to understand if you truly have something that's immutable is where you go in and delete all the backup files. Just delete them.
Mm-hmm.
And then come back to it. Are they back? Are they there again? That's immutable.
And it's not easy to pull off.
And they're gone. It doesn't matter if they're encrypted or not. They're gone.
And it's not easy to pull off because as an MSP, you always have administrator, domain admin, root. You always have the top level access. So if it's not just could the client, but could your engineer, could my engineer. So there's a lot of ways you can do it. Last little tip I will give you, in almost all the public cloud providers, they have some version of immutable object storage. So that's one place you can look. In addition to Serosity, the one tip I would mention is there are governance mode and compliance mode. And one of those is a guardrails to hope you can't remove it, but isn't really immutable. It's more of a guardrails. And the other one is what you're looking for, where no matter what, you can't remove it, no matter what access is given. And I see too many MSPs that go buy immutable storage from the vendor, get a product that can do immutable backups, which is 2 out of the 3 things, and fall victim because it's one of the immutable storages, but it's a guardrail version. It's not a true immutability, and that I'd hate to see you do 98% of the work and get none of the benefit. So look for that little tidbit there. Well, guys, keep the comments coming. This is awesome discussion. I'm going to switch it up a little bit, Wayne. Give us
Yep.
a kind of down to earth explanation on compliance, and maybe I would frame it like if I'm talking to a client, in client, why they need to care. Like they probably don't know much about NIST or CMMC or what have you, but how do I need to talk to them in a way that makes them understand this isn't really optional. This is not buzzword soup. I'm not just
Right.
trying to tell you about speeds and fees and faster gear to buy.
Yeah, I don't approach them with NIST and CIS and all that. I don't do that. I pay attention, like I said, in one of the questions about the lead in. Um, I talk about things that affect their business from a risk standpoint. So CPAs in the finance market, it's the FTC safeguards. Do you know about this rule that's come out that if you don't do this, anybody that accepts a credit card, doesn't matter who you are you doing these things in place to protect the user's data? If you're not, you can be fined for that. Okay. Also, you can lose certain business depending on what you're going in there. You got certain uh, certifications you got to have to be able to do that business. You're not going to get them. Bookkeeping, CPAs, the IRS rules. It's not me coming in saying and giving all this gobbledygook. It is I can give them a specific reference that they've already either gotten in a mail, sent to them in a letter in mail, or when they go get their CPE classes to on continuing education, they're being talked to about what they have to do. This is law, not a nice to have. It's not me trying to do fear, uncertainty, and doubt. This is their own industry telling them you have to do this to be compliant to be able to do business. If you're not, you're subject to fines. That's how I have the discussion and educate. My job is to educate them on the things that they don't understand about it, or how does it apply? How do I do all these things? How do I get it done? Go educate. Always approach it from an educational standpoint, not a sales standpoint. It's not me trying to scare you to death. I'm trying to educate you on what your industry is telling you need to do.
How
And
do
then
you
we drive it.
educate? Yeah, yeah. How do you educate on that risk, right? I mean, we all have the client that's like, yeah, that's not likely. Like, they'll never audit me. I'll never get ransomed. You have those sort of. So how do you educate on the risk when maybe they don't know any
It's
of the
funny you
risk
get that.
factors?
It's funny because one thing that I educate them, I show them the industry from FBI stats, from uh, other industry experts, and coming into it and saying, show them, look, 67% of all hacks happen on the SMB market. Why? What? I don't have this tremendous amount of money. I don't have all this information. Okay, think about the information you do have and the information you have about your clients. Okay, if I can get into you that's small, that's not doing the things that you need, so you're an easy target. Yeah, I might not get a lot of money from you. You might not even get ransomed because all they want is whatever your list is, and then they go to those and try to get into those. When they get into those, then they expand out again. So think about it. I use the example, think of a reverse pyramid. I'll get the least common denominator is the easiest to get into, so I can get from 1 to 5, and then 5 to 30, so on and so on. Now I'm getting to places where I can go make money. That's how the hackers are thinking about it. So to say that I'm small and my information is not important, that's not true. You're burying your head in the sand. I hate to say it that way, but that's exactly what's happening. Because if you ignore it, you're the easy picking and you're going to get in there and go after it. Think about this. How many of you have heard of someone in your family or someone else's family that got the call from Microsoft that's saying, hey, your computer, it needs to be fixed. Let me help you with that. And they opened up the door and let them get in.
Mm-hmm.
That's a prime example of going after the low end fruit to get into more.
Yep.
Okay. It happens all the day. We hear it, but are we really paying attention to it? My job is to educate them. You are important. Your information is important. and I can use it to do greater damage. So you may not have paid the ransom, but if someone else upstream that's one of your clients gets hacked, then forensics comes in and found out they got the information from you, your reputation just got hit. Can you survive that hit? How many of your clients are going to walk away because you wasn't protecting their information? Not yours, theirs.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's about. That's what you got to educate everyone about, because that's what's happening. It's not maybe, it's happening every day.
Right. So let's bring it back to the MSP side. So what's let me talk about maybe the folks that are just like, I don't know. I don't sell to DoD and I'm a smaller MSP and I don't know, I can't hire a CISO or a vCISO or those sort of things. So what's the risk if I'm a small MSP and I'm just kind of burying my head in the sand, ignoring compliance, hoping they don't ask me too much about it because I really don't have the answers. I haven't been on this to ask Wayne the great questions. I don't know it all, and because of fear of unknown and uncertainty, and maybe because they don't want to give the wrong advice, they're just kind of avoiding kind of the compliance talk, if you will. What kind of advice would you give them?
What I'd highly recommend, you don't have to go out and be selling compliance, but you need to be compliant. Let me state that again. You don't have to be selling compliance, but you need to be compliant. And if you make yourself compliant, then you know how to help your clients be compliant. Whether you do it yourself or even where I've got JV partners that I help that are MSPs that don't want to do compliancy. They actually do a partnership with us, and we'll do the compliancy. They do their MSP. We have it in contract. We're not going to, take you this business or any of that, but we help them because they don't have the resources or don't want to do compliancy. And I can understand that. I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess, is I love to dig into those type of things. But the reason why you either do it or get aligned with someone that can help you is those clients, industry's going to hit them. Other vendors are going to talk to them and ask them these questions, and then they're going to turn around and ask you that question. That's how it's going to happen. It happens every day. I tell people it's real easy. I don't have to go after your clients. I have clients calling me. I just had one call yesterday that I sent a letter to a year ago talking about compliance. And they said, hey, we love our IT guys. They're doing great work. Hey, great. They called us a year and 3 days later. Hey, can you help us with compliance? Because our IT provider can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening. That's the reason why you got to be aware of it. And not that you have to do it yourself, but make sure you got an alliance with a JV partner that you can work with and build a relationship with to go do it. You need to do one of two because it's not going to go away. It's just going to get worse. So for yourself, right off the bat, first thing you do, get yourself compliant. That
I
means,
couldn't
do
agree
you have your
more.
policies in place? Do you have your security things in place? Is your documentation in place about how you're doing things? That way, when your customer gets audited and they ask you about your vendor, because you have what's called shared responsibility. All of us do. It's law. You got to be able to provide that information. If you can't do it, now you just hurt your own reputation. It's sad to say that way, but that's one of the things is I made sure we took care of our own shop before we did anybody else because I can't afford not to.
Right. Right.
So I highly recommend taking that and doing it for yourself. That way, you know how to talk about it with your customer and decide, hey, we really need to get this done. This is not what we do, but we have a JV partner that we work with to go do this and use it from a standpoint of we're having checks and balances. We want the checks and balances. We want to make sure we're doing it right for you so you're protected and we're protected. So we got this JV partner that does nothing but the compliance, works this, and will tell us where we're deficient so we can go fix it. Position
Scott,
it that way. Now you're solving the problem. You're mitigating risk for your client.
exactly.
That's how you want to go off about doing that.
Scott stole the words out of my mouth. Really good point. Easy to overlook that you need to be compliant yourself. So
Hmm.
well said. And just to kind of read between the lines, right? What Wayne is saying is, in my estimation, is if you're the primary care physician uh, as an MSP, you don't also have to be the heart surgeon or the brain surgeon, right?
Right.
They all refer
Exactly.
to specialists, and there's no
That's right.
reason we can't do that in the MSP world and form a JV or joint venture partnership. I know
Exactly.
Wayne well enough that you could reach out to him and talk about that with him. And if he's not the right person, he'll tell you. He might even be able to connect you to somebody that is a better fit. There's plenty of enough business to go around, and
Yep.
that way you don't have to take the burden of all the compliance on, because then you can go to Wayne and say, how do I make myself compliant? How do I get my ducks in order? That's job one. And then you could say, great, instead of avoiding compliance, which is going to get asked and asked and asked, even if it's just cybersecurity, the like you said, MFA is not just do you have it or not. Now it's do you have it everywhere? Can you prove it? Is your storage immutable? There's just more and more, and it doesn't seem like it's going to slow down anytime soon. And if you're caught flat-footed, then they're going to find somebody else. And so you need to build that in house, or you need to look at it in my opinion, like you would just like a general practitioner, your medical doctor would refer to a heart surgeon. Let Wayne or somebody else like that who's deep into this take care of the compliance if you're not going to build that out in house.
That's
Really,
the best
really powerful.
layman explanation you could do, because that's exactly what we tell you is, you're the primary, but you got specialist. And
Right.
that's everywhere. So your customers are going to actually like you even more, and it builds your trust as a trusted advisor for your clients. And that's what your ultimate goal is, right? To be that trusted advisor all the time.
That's right. That's right. Amen. How, as an MSP, how would you use this to grow your business, differentiate, get ahead of your competitors, however you want to kind of frame that? But there's obviously a lot of opportunity, a lot
Hmm.
of misinformation, a lot of opportunity for education. How would you use it? What would you start doing? Give us some good tips to get started.
Oh, what I did was, about a year and a half ago, looking at it, and because of some of the panels I was sitting on, I started seeing that, the trend here. This is a business that, as a service, because typically this compliance is done once a year. Even in banking, that's one of the heavy regulators. They would do it once a year. They would have someone that was the compliance manager that had no clue what IT was. What would they do to get their audit done, all their prep work to meet the audit? They would go borrow people out of the IT environment to help them go analyze themselves of whether they're doing the job right or not. So think about what I just said. Okay. I use the analogy. My baby's beautiful. It's never ugly.
That's right.
Okay. So, that's about as simple an analogy I can make. So when I started doing that, went and talked to some of my banking, and I told them about this idea. I was thinking about the client. They're going, is there tool sets you can go do this and be able to do it? Absolutely. So think about it. No different service of what you're doing in managed services now, where you're monitoring, you're automating, patching, you're doing these things. Compliance is the same thing. It's just a different set of tools and a different set of components that you're using to go off and do this. So, but the important piece is, if you're going to take on that, if you're going to go look at building that, the biggest advice I can give you is always have separation of church and state. What do I mean? The state is my MSP side of my business. My folks that do all the MSP work, they don't touch compliance at all. I have a different set of folks that are the compliance people. Now they know IT, they got CISSP certification. I got CISO that I'm hoping joins them 19th, comes in. And now if I got a client and I'm doing the compliance analysis of a client that is my MSP client, the compliance guys do all this, and then the actual POAM, it's basically is the uh, uh, it's uh, yeah, just went blank. But basically, it's the milestones. It's the things you need to fix and the milestones to get there. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
very important document when it comes to compliance. That's given to the MSP side, and they go do the fix. They report back up into the system that they've got it done. We test again. The two shall never meet. The only time they meet is passing that information. So you have that separation, so I can show it's a true test of different set group to another group, and there's no influence between the two. Make sure you do that. Okay, that's very, very important, because as soon as you start sharing resource between the both, then you have no separation. Therefore, it lends to have credibility hurt. Auditors will pick that up. That's one of the first things I get asked. Okay, who are the members that did this and who are the members of that? And we show them the system, how it's done, how the communication is done only in our system. And there's no way that it's being done any other way. And therefore, that allows my client's audit to pass, because I'm doing it the appropriate way.
So what you're saying is Teams messages or group chat or something's not exactly how you want to see
Yeah,
that
you
happen.
don't do it through there. You do it through the platform that's tracking it. So that way it's done. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Awesome points here, guys. Any last comments? We'll take as many as we can. That will enter you to win this amazing book, The Compliance Formula. And if you happen to join at servasi.com/deep dive, you can win that. I
I'll
know
add
we just
one
got
more point to that.
Yeah,
I want to add
go
one
for
more
it.
point to that, getting started and coming into that. Something you can do right now today and not have a compliance program in place, but start establishing what you're doing. Go back to what I talked about before, talking about cybersecurity insurance. Get a relationship with someone like a Data Stream, and there's some others out there, but where you can go do a free analysis of the cybersecurity policy they have. Make sure you're meeting requirements, to where in your MSP now, you're making sure you got the things in place that meet those requirements. So if it's ever needed, it'll pay out. That alone, you're mitigating risk, and it's something you can do today and know nothing about compliance. You can do it as soon as we get off this call. You could start that process. That's the first step I would take in that journey, because now you can affect real change right now and build your credibility at the same time.
Well said. It's about risk, right?
It's all about risk.
Risk is a 4-letter word, right? So there's a reason, and the compliance just folds into that.
I thought about it that way, but that's a good point.
Well, we all struggle with it, right? And I'll speak for myself. Like, they keep being more cybersecurity questions, and you keep, it's like you said, identify the number of records. Well, how do you do that? Where are the records? Even if you're trying to, if you didn't have the right tooling, try to dig through a browser cache and find the records. So it's really, really hard to do. Well, I think we have time for maybe one more comment, but it's really hard to do that. So if you can get your hands around the risk, do that. To help them with some risk, you can earn trust and go from there. Last comment we'll take today. Scott, do cybersecurity insurance companies also provide help with compliance?
Do they have help with compliance? I'm not sure if I'm following your question right, Scott, but let me take a stab at this. I don't know if there is companies out there that, like CPA firms that do CPA work, but yet they have a managed services side or have a compliance side. Okay, that'll go deliver. Insurance companies, I believe there's going to be a trend where they do, but at the same time, there's a conflict of interest there. Think about that. And so it'd be interesting to see how they would do it, because, yeah, will they give guidance comply? That's part of what we're doing right now when they come into it. But a lot of time, the salespeople that are selling that don't know how. Now you got people like Data Stream, and how they're a big broker is basically what they're doing, and their sales model is to talk about how they need to be compliant for cybersecurity insurance to pay out. So they have those discussions, but they don't do the work. They partner with people like us to do the work. And actually, the Data Stream is extremely good about positioning their partners why they need to use the partner to do these things to meet the insurance. They don't want to do the work, because that's not their business. That's not what they do. as a whole. At least that's what I'm seeing. Will that change? I think there'll be some that will attempt it. I honestly believe they will. Um, be interesting to see how they mitigate the conflict of interest, as far as I think they'll have.
Yeah, Scott's saying it seems like it would be in their best interests to not have many claims due to controls in place. So there
Right.
might be a separation of interest there.
That's the reason why Data Stream is partnering with people like us, is to minimize that and educate on that, but they're not doing the work. They advise them that you need to get somebody to do these things. And if you don't, they won't pay out, but they're not doing the work themselves.
Yeah, we were talking backstage, Wayne, and it just kind of, layman's terms dawned on me. It's like every business is paying for cybersecurity insurance. It's not getting any cheaper. Yet, in fact, in a lot of conversations, the premiums are going up, the deductibles are going up, the coverage is dwindling, getting more specific, harder to pay out on, and that's before you even talk about all the things that they're adding in terms of immutable storage and testing and proof of it and all these things that they didn't used to do. So it's making it much easier for them to pay out not pay out or pay out less. So just kind of layman's terms is a light bulb moment for me. It's like, well, man, it's a pretty decent number you spend every year in terms of cybersecurity insurance. And if you're paying for all of that insurance, but it's basically worthless, right? Then why don't you just light your money on fire and at least you keep warm for a minute or two? If you're paying an insurance company and getting no benefit, let's be realistic about it.
And the way it's working right now, and the way we see it work, is think about, and it's very similar in a way how part of audits in banks work. The less deficiencies you have, the more power you get in loan power. Okay. From a cybersecurity insurance situation, the more things you have protected, the more the requirements you meet, the cheaper the policy becomes. The less you have done, the more expensive. I've seen 600 to 1,000% increases in rates.
Wow.
Because they didn't have certain things covered. But also, we're seeing more and more often now underwriters going, we're not going to underwrite you. Because you have too many deficiencies. So they're not even going to write the policy, period. Okay.
Is it fair to compare this to like, you've ruined your credit score, and
that's a good way of looking at it.
You're going to get turned down from most lenders, and the ones that approve you are going to be.
That's a good analogy. Yes, really? I would agree with that analogy. Yeah.
Okay.
And as we come in there and see, and remember the term the POAM, plan of action and milestones. They come back to me. Even in the cybersecurity insurance, we're going in and you got those things, and you say, yes, we don't have this, but here's our plan and our dates when we're going to get this stuff implemented. They'll take that as part of looking at it and go put those in place. But if those things, they're going to check on them. If they don't happen, your rates are going to go up, or they just deny it any place there. But also just keep in mind is whatever the requirements are that's in the policy, if they're not in place, they're not going to pay. So if you had one deficient, you got that plan of action, you don't get it done and prove that you got it in place, and you get hacked, they're not going to pay. And that's really where it comes to in there.
Right. So we need to do this because we're protecting our clients. We need to do this because you don't want to spend all the money and not have your insurance be worth anything. And then otherwise you're also driving your costs down, and it's not like it's going away. Cybersecurity insurance, you need it, and you need it every year. And it might be one of the things you could drive down versus what you're spending now, unlike everything else. Maybe one or two more if you have just a minute, Wayne.
Sure. I'm good.
We have Andre who says, who is recommending cyber insurance to these small businesses other than the MSP community?
Well, most of the insurance companies out there offer it. Some of them don't specialize in it. And if you have a client that has what's used to be called the cyber insurance rider, those are worthless. They're just worthless. Those are being going away. So you'll have insurance companies out there that'll bring it up. and they'll talk about the policy and put it on there. But most of them, they don't specialize in it. There's companies out there that all they sell is cyber insurance, cybersecurity insurance only, none of the other. So I've been driving my clients and asking them when I ask about those policies, what are you doing? But now the other people where they get this information from, all your clients, they have different industry events they go to. Like in the CPAs, they have these different events they do. I'm actually presenting at 2 of them this year. I got banking events they go to. They all have their own industry events. These topics come up in every one of them I've been to, every industry. So even their own industry events, their industry magazines that they have, all that, they're all talking about it. And they have been for a while. So they're getting it not only from the MSPs, but they're getting it from their own industry. So if you're not talking to them about it, you should be, because other people are going to be.
Right, right. You better be talking to them about it too, educating them. Be a trusted advisor. We have one last from Scott saying, thank you. Cybersecurity insurance seems like an immature and complex insurance type because of the complexity and few insurance companies understand. So thank you for saying that and all of these things. If you guys enjoyed this, please drop a like, a follow, or a nice comment here for Wayne. Speaking of that, Wayne, thank you so much for being here. This has been amazing. And thank you. I know you're busy with the launch of the compliance formula, becoming a bestseller, running your MSP, speaking of these events. So this is amazing. You could make time. How could folks get connected to you if they're interested?
Real simple. Just go to our website. Matter of fact, I think you got a link to our website coming in there, but go to www.avtek solutions.com. You can actually book on my calendar right from there if you want to talk or whatever, but there's plenty of information there. There's stuff about the book. I got our last podcast we did is on there if you want to watch it, and a few other things. So if you want, I'd be glad to talk with you.
Yeah, if you're watching this live, if you're watching on the replay, reach out to Wayne. Morgan will drop in links to buy the book. If you did not get your hands on a free copy, remember the book, The Compliance Formula, is something you're going to want to read, and all the proceeds go to benefit St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. So get your hands on that for you and your team. If you've commented, look out for Morgan from my team to reach out to you in terms of getting a hold of that book. Thank you so much for your time, Wayne. This has been awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me back, and it's always fun to have a conversation. And I like sharing whatever I can with everybody because it helps us all.
We're here for you guys, so you guys let us know. We should have Wayne back again.
Be happy to.
Okay, awesome. Well, listen, guys, before I totally disappear, if you've commented, keep those going. We're going to have a drawing and give out multiple copies of the best-selling book, The Compliance Formula by Wayne Hunter. So you're going to want to buy that with the link in the description, or get a free copy by just commenting. You can also get your hands on a free copy just by going to Servacity.com/deep-dive and registering. So if you're an IT provider or MSP and you're interested in Servacity and or getting a copy of the book, go to Servacity.com/deep-dive. If you commented, Morgan Falco from my team will be reaching out to you if you're one of those winners that get your hands on a free copy of the book. Thank you for being on MSP Mindset. Follow, link on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, etc., or mspmindset.com/news if you don't want to miss out on any of the amazing guests that we have here. I will see you here in 2 weeks.